Ever get that feeling? Like you're giving something your all, pushing forward, but there's this nagging feeling in the back of your mind asking, is this even worth it? You know that feeling, right?
Oh, absolutely. That feeling of being stuck, unsure if you should keep pushing or make a change. It's something a lot of us struggle with.
For sure. And, you sent over that episode, How Walking Away Can Be Your Greatest Strength. And I got to say, that title really jumped out at me. Walking away as a strength. Okay, let's unpack that a bit.
It is a bit counterintuitive, right? I mean, we're sort of conditioned to believe that walking away equals failure.
Yeah, you're right. It's like we're supposed to persevere no matter what.
Exactly. And that's what this episode really digs into, how that kind of societal pressure can really trip us up when we need to make tough decisions. Like, think about the sunk cost fallacy. Ever heard of that?
Remind me.
It's this thing where we end up sticking with something, could be a job, a relationship, a project that's going nowhere just because we've already put so much time and energy into it, even if it's making us miserable.
Ugh, yeah. Like when you spend an hour trying to untangle a string of Christmas lights just because you've already come so far, and you end up with a bigger mess than when you started.
Exactly. It's hard to walk away when you feel like you've invested so much. And then there's the fear of the unknown. Talk about a powerful force. Our brains are wired to prefer what's familiar, even if it's not good for us.
So true.
That amygdala, the part of our brain that deals with fear, it goes haywire anytime we think about stepping outside our comfort zone.
Oh, for sure. It's like it's trying to protect us, but sometimes it keeps us from amazing things.
Yeah.
Speaking of, there was that story in the podcast. The host was talking about feeling trapped in a job.
Oh, right.
And they felt like they just had to make it work because they had put in so much time and energy already. But then, get this, they finally walk away. And they talk about this incredible sense of liberation. Like, finally they could breathe and see all these possibilities that were hidden before.
It's like that saying, isn't it? Sometimes you have to let go to see if there's something better to catch. And that's exactly what they were saying in that episode. Like, staying in a situation that's no longer serving you is like, and I love this analogy, driving with the parking brake on.
Ouch. Yeah, that visual, right?
You might inch forward, but at what cost? You're putting in all this effort, and you'll never reach your full potential, never experience the freedom of cruising on the open road.
Wow, I love that analogy. So it's like, instead of viewing walking away as a sign of defeat, maybe it's actually the key to unlocking, like, new opportunities and growth.
Absolutely.
But how do we even know when to, like, pump the brakes? Because it's not always the right move to walk away from a challenge, is it?
You're absolutely right. It's about finding that balance. Sometimes perseverance is what's needed. If you've got that fire in your belly, that passion for what you're doing, and the challenges you're facing are surmountable, then by all means, push through those obstacles.
Right. It's about knowing the difference between a challenge that's helping you grow and one that's just dragging you down.
100%. And that can be a tricky thing to figure out, especially when, like we were saying before, fear tends to rear its head in those moments of uncertainty.
It's funny how fear works that way, right? Like the podcast hosts were talking about their own experiences with fear and walking away, and one of them shared about leaving a relationship.
Oh, right.
And they knew, logically, that it was the best thing for them, but actually doing it, terrifying.
Isn't it, though? That fear of the unknown can really hold us back. Like, we're hardwired to crave that sense of security, even if what we have isn't really making us happy.
It's that saying, better the devil you know, right?
Exactly. And behavioral economists even have a term for it, loss aversion. It basically means we tend to feel the pain of a loss more intensely than the pleasure of an equivalent gain. So we cling to what's familiar, even if it's not serving us, because the thought of losing it, well, that just feels worse.
It's like our brains would rather play it safe than risk the possibility of things not working out, even if it means staying stuck in a not-so-great situation. But the hosts, they really emphasize this idea that real growth, it really happens within our comfort zone, right?
Exactly. Choosing ourselves, even when it feels scary, it opens up all these possibilities. Imagine walking through a door you were afraid to open before and discovering a whole new world on the other side. That's what it can feel like.
That's a great way to put it. And it reminds me of something else the podcast touched on. Walking away with strength isn't about being reckless or impulsive. It's about being thoughtful, having a plan.
Absolutely. They had some great tips, remember?
Yes. Trusting your gut, having a solid plan, and being kind to yourself through it all. I love that they started with intuition. Like for me, it's often that little voice inside that whispers, something's not quite right here.
It's such a powerful tool, but we're often taught to ignore it, to prioritize logic and reason over those gut feelings. But learning to trust that inner wisdom, it can be invaluable, especially when you're facing a tough decision.
Totally. But it's not enough to just hear that inner voice. You have to be willing to act on it, right? And that's where having a plan comes in.
100%. It's about making clear-headed, strategic choices that are in line with your values and your goals, not just acting on impulse.
Okay, so let's say someone's thinking about making a change. What are some tangible steps they can take to create that plan? Because I know, for me, I can get stuck in the what-if stage and never actually take action.
That's so common. And that's why having a plan is so helpful. It's like a roadmap to guide you, even if it changes along the way. So for example, if you're feeling unfulfilled in your job, maybe your plan involves updating your resume, or maybe you start networking with people in your field, or you commit to spending an hour each week researching different career paths.
It's about taking those small but meaningful steps.
Yeah, exactly. To build that sense of agency, that feeling that you're in control, that you have the power to make a change when you're ready.
Instead of feeling trapped and helpless. And I love that you touched on the emotional side of things, because making a change like this, walking away from something, even if you know it's for the best, it can be really tough.
It can be a real emotional roller coaster.
Definitely. And that's why, like the podcast emphasized, being kind to yourself throughout the whole process is so important. It's way too easy to be hard on ourselves, right?
Yeah.
Especially when we're in a tough spot. We start with the what ifs and the doubts. Did I make the right choice? What will everyone think?
It's so true. We're often our own worst critics. But remembering to be kind to ourselves, especially when we're navigating big changes, that's so key.
Absolutely. And the podcast actually ended on such a hopeful note about this whole thing. You know, the possibilities that can open up when we let go of things that aren't serving us.
Right. It's not about closing doors forever. It's more like opening up new ones, new possibilities that we might not even be able to see right now.
Yes. Like they had this great quote. Hold on, I wrote it down. Here it is. You can't discover new oceans if you're afraid to lose sight of the shore.
Ooh, I like that.
Right. It's so easy to get laser focused on what we're leaving behind, that fear of the unknown, that we forget to even consider what we might gain by venturing out.
It's about changing our perspective, right? Shifting from a place of fear and scarcity to a place of possibility and, well, abundance. And honestly, that shift in thinking, that's where the real magic happens.
Totally. Okay, so as we wrap up this deep dive, I have one last question to leave you with. It's a big one, so feel free to sit with it for a bit. Imagine for a second that fear is completely out of the picture. What's one thing in your life, maybe it's a situation, a commitment, even a belief you've been holding on to, that you would choose to walk away from if fear wasn't a factor?
It's such a good question. What would it look like to make decisions from a place of pure possibility? What could you create? Who could you become?
It's all good, right? And those are the questions I hope you'll keep exploring, even after this deep dive. And hey, remember this, walking away from something, it might not always be easy, but sometimes it's the most powerful step you can take towards a life that truly lights you up.